Amid empires built on ambition and blood, one emperor chose a different path, the path of reason and compassion. Marcus Aurelius sought no glory in the sword, but in the art of remaining calm within chaos. While his world burned with war, plague, and rebellion, he sat and wrote, not to teach others, but to remind himself that power fades, flesh decays, yet a self-governed soul endures forever. In an age of rulers who led through fear, Marcus ruled through wisdom, and 2,000 years later, his light still burns. The Stoic flame he kindled reminds humanity that true greatness is not in ruling the world, but in mastering one's own mind. In the mid-2nd century CE, when the Roman Empire stood at the height of its power, there ruled an emperor with the soul of a philosopher, Marcus Aurelius. He governed not through fear, but through wisdom, not by the sword, but by reason. During years when war, plague, and rebellion threatened the vast empire, Marcus quietly filled the pages of a small journal, Meditations, not for glory, but as reminders to himself. Power, fame, and victory are all fleeting. The only thing that cannot be taken from a man is the dignity and mastery of his own soul. To him, being emperor was not about ruling others, but about ruling oneself. The age of Marcus Aurelius was far from peaceful. Barbarian invasions shook the northern frontiers. Rome seethed with political intrigue. The Antonine Plague claimed millions of lives. Yet amid this chaos, he wrote of compassion, of discipline, and of remaining tranquil in the face of death. Others saw a ruler carrying the fate of an empire. Marcus saw himself as a small part of a vast cosmos. He believed that while man cannot control the world, he can always control his response to it. With that mindset, he turned the throne into a place of meditation, where power did not corrupt him, but revealed his humility and his limits. All around us, everything is changing, he wrote. Only the mind guided by reason can remain constant. For Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism was not a doctrine to preach, but a path to live. He trained himself daily like a spiritual soldier, never letting anger rule, fear cloud judgment, or desire sway righteousness. Amid deceit, he chose honesty. Amid bloodshed, he chose mercy. In a world where power often devoured the powerful, he proved that one could hold absolute authority without losing one's humanity. People called him the philosopher-king, yet Marcus saw that title as hollow. He did not regard himself as a master, only a man striving to be better each day. His writings and meditations were not lessons for others, but meditations for himself. Reminders such as, do not let your mind be disturbed by what is beyond your control. Seek no happiness in others. Everything that happens is meant to happen. Each line marked an inner battle, reason against emotion, where true victory meant staying calm amid life's storms. Marcus Aurelius left the world not just an empire's legacy, but a spiritual inheritance, proof that real strength lies not in weapons or command, but in the ability to remain serene amid the tempests of fate. He showed that one can rule an empire and still be humble, face death, and still smile. For him, power was never domination, but self-control. Greatness was never about conquering others, but conquering oneself. And that is the immortal lesson of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome, that true greatness resides not in power, but in a soul that governs itself. Marcus Aurelius was not born to be a philosopher. He was born to be an emperor, and perhaps that is what makes his journey more extraordinary than that of any sage. As a young boy, he was captivated by the teachings of Epictetus, a former slave who wrote about spiritual freedom. From him, Marcus learned that a person's worth lies not in status, but in virtue. In the opulent Roman court, where desire and power intertwined, the young Marcus chose simplicity. He rejected the luxuries that others considered privileges. He slept on a hard bed, wore coarse robes, and devoted his time to reading, writing, and reflection. While others lived to be admired, he lived to understand himself. And it was this understanding that made him a different kind of ruler, one who knew that no throne could shield the unrest of the soul. When chosen as heir, Marcus understood that the path before him was not glory, but burden. As emperor, he could command millions, but not destiny itself. War, plague, and rebellion all came like trials designed by fate for him alone. During the bitter northern campaigns, when frost and disease devoured his soldiers, Marcus wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your perception of it." These were not the words of a man writing from comfort, but of one standing in the snow, death within arm's reach, and yet still serene. In such hardship, Stoicism ceased to be philosophy. It became his very breath. What made Marcus Aurelius great was not that he never felt fear, but that he faced it with reason. He did not deny human emotion, sorrow, anger, grief, loss, but observed them as a philosopher observes the wind, arriving, passing, dissolving. In Meditations, he wrote, "Nothing external can harm a man unless his soul allows it." To him, the mind was a fortress, one that could only be conquered from within. This was the essence of inner strength. True freedom is not the absence of chains, but the refusal to let the mind be bound. A man surrounded by chaos can still be the freest of all, if he remains calm within himself, unshaken by the storms of emotion that enslave others. During his reign, Rome faced its greatest crises since the Republic. A plague claimed nearly a third of the population. The treasury ran dry, and the frontiers crumbled. Yet amid despair, Marcus did not yield to hopelessness. Instead of cursing his fate, he saw adversity as a divine examination. "If the universe has given me this trial, it means I have the strength to endure it." This was not mere self-comfort, but the way he lived every day. Though his body weakened from illness, he continued to write, not for posterity, but to remind himself, "Every soul has a spark of the divine. Live worthy of that spark." Each line he wrote stands as proof that even in darkness, a person can keep the flame of reason alive, if they choose to look inward instead of outward. And perhaps that is why, more than 2,000 years later, Marcus Aurelius remains the model of the ideal leader, one who can stand amid chaos without being consumed by it. He taught that power without discipline breeds cruelty, and discipline without compassion becomes cold. He chose the middle path, where reason and empathy coexist. For he understood that true strength lies not in command, but in self-control. "You may rule the world," he once reminded himself, "but if you cannot rule your mind, you are still a slave." That lesson, the mastery of the inner life, is why the name Marcus Aurelius endures not only in history books, but in the hearts of all who seek meaning, calm, and dignity in a storm-tossed world. Marcus Aurelius did not turn to philosophy to become a great man. He turned to it to remain human. Between the gilded throne and the trials of the heart, he chose philosophy as his shield of the spirit. Each morning, before entering the court, he reminded himself in Meditations, "Today I shall meet people who are selfish, deceitful, arrogant, ungrateful, and rude. but I will not be angry with them, for they do not know what they do. These were not words for others, but a vow to himself, that power must never crush compassion, and adversity must never strip away serenity. In a world built on betrayal, he chose to believe in the goodness of human nature, knowing that hatred weighs down the soul, while kindness sets the mind free. What made Marcus extraordinary was not that he was unshaken, but that he knew how to rise after being shaken. When betrayed by trusted allies, he did not seek revenge. When he lost his beloved son, he did not drown in despair. Instead, he wrote, "Do not say, 'I have lost,' but say, 'I have returned it.'" That brief line captures the essence of Stoicism: acceptance of impermanence and the love of fate, amor fati. To him, life was not a series of events to be controlled, but a journey of learning, where each loss revealed something deeper about the self. His ability to perceive every hardship through reason rather than emotion made him unbreakable, an emperor whom even suffering could not defeat. Marcus Aurelius understood that inner strength does not come from avoiding emotion, but from observing and understanding it. He did not teach indifference, he taught clarity. In Meditations, he wrote, "Let your soul be like the rock that the waves crash upon. It stands firm, and the sea falls still around it." That image captures the Stoic spirit perfectly, not the denial of feeling, but the mastery of it. The Stoic does not strive to be made of iron, but of glass, transparent, allowing joy and sorrow to pass through, but not remain. Marcus tempered his mind as one tempers steel, never letting softness become weakness, nor strength become cruelty. His calm was not coldness, it was the warmth of wisdom, the kind that is born only after facing the deepest fears of the human heart. There is one passage in Meditations that many consider the heart of Stoic thought. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. It is a declaration for all generations that no one can rule your mind but you. Marcus knew that while one cannot control circumstances, one can always control how to meet them. He trained himself daily so that his mind would not be tossed by praise or blame. When praised, he reminded himself that flattery adds nothing to his worth. When criticized, he remembered that reproach takes nothing away. Each line he wrote was a conversation with himself, sharpening reason like a blade, so that when life's storms came, he would not need to flee, for he had already built a temple of peace within. What Marcus Aurelius left to the world was not merely a book, but proof that philosophy is not just for monks and hermits, but for those who bear crowns and responsibilities. He proved that tranquility is not the privilege of those who have little, but the choice of those who have everything, and know that it is enough. In his words, we see not only wisdom, but the loneliness of a soul striving to stay pure amid the mire of power. Yet that loneliness became his light. For in a world where most are devoured by the power they wield, Marcus Aurelius chose the opposite path. He let philosophy rule him, not his throne. And in doing so, he left humanity an immortal lesson, that the greatest power is not the power to command others, but the power to command one's own heart. Marcus Aurelius stands as proof that even between absolute power and inner wisdom, there can exist a perfect balance. He did not seek perfection, he sought truth. And to him, truth was not found in glory or victory, but in how one responds to what cannot be avoided. In Meditations, he asked himself, if a good man cannot live in this world, then what purpose does the world serve? That question was not only for himself, but for all humanity. He understood that being good in times of peace is difficult, but keeping one's compassion in times of chaos is true greatness. Amid a world of ambition and betrayal, he chose kindness, not because it was easy, but because it was right. That was the difference between a king and a philosopher, yet Marcus managed to embody both within one heart. Though he lived in palaces, he never allowed himself to forget that all things are fleeting. He reminded himself, "Those who praise me today will forget me tomorrow, and I shall forget them as well." To Marcus, fame was nothing more than the breath of the wind. It could be felt, but never held. He did not see public approval as a goal, but honesty with himself as a duty. Thus, every act he took was measured not by benefit, but by virtue. He wrote, "Do what is right, speak what is true, and endure what must be endured." That simple line became the compass for an entire reign. It transformed philosophy from an abstract idea into a living ethic, not just for scholars in ivory towers, but for people struggling to stay moral in the real world. In his later years, Marcus was no longer the young emperor full of strength, but a weary man after years of war and sickness. Yet in that weariness, the light of his Stoic philosophy burned even brighter. He wrote, "Death smiles at us all. All we can do is smile back." It was not a statement of despair, but the calm declaration of a soul that had come to terms with the limits of life. To Marcus, death was not an enemy, but a teacher, reminding humanity to live more deeply, more compassionately, and more truthfully. When one truly accepts mortality, greed fades, hatred dissolves, and deceit loses meaning. What remains, when all vanity is stripped away, is the pure essence of the soul: stillness, clarity, and compassion. What made Marcus Aurelius unique was that he never imposed his philosophy upon others. He did not command people to live as he did. He simply lived as an example. He did not preach morality. He embodied it. When faced with rebellion, he sought forgiveness over vengeance. When confronting his enemies, he refused humiliation. During his Danube campaigns, when prisoners of war were captured, he spared their lives, gave them land, and welcomed them as Roman citizens. To him, mercy was not weakness, but the ultimate strength, for only those who have conquered themselves can forgive others. And Marcus did so in an age when compassion was mistaken for frailty. And so, when he looked back upon his life, Marcus Aurelius did not call himself great. He called himself a student of being human. "I cannot make others live rightly," he wrote, "but I can live rightly among them." That was the essence of inner strength, not controlling others, but mastering oneself, not forcing the world to change, but transforming the way one lives within it. He believed that if each person could hold fast to their reason, harmony would follow naturally. That is why, though centuries have swept away empires, Marcus's words still echo, a timeless reminder that power may make us mighty, but only wisdom and compassion can make us eternal. Marcus Aurelius did not let philosophy remain trapped in books. He lived it every single day. Each morning, before the sun rose, he would write simple reminders to himself. "Today, live as if it were your last." To him, life was not something to be wasted on doubt or fear. He believed that though a man cannot control what happens, he can always control how he responds. Every misfortune was an opportunity to strengthen the mind. Every wound, a lesson in letting go, and every passing day, an invitation to live better than the one before. Marcus did not chase happiness in the future. He found it in the present moment, in breath, in duty, in gratitude for the chance to live rightly, guided by reason. Those who served near Marcus said he never lost his temper. Though he faced hundreds of crises each day, rebellions, plagues, political intrigue, personal loss, he remained remarkably calm. Not because he lacked emotion, but because he had learned to see everything from the perspective of eternity. Where others saw tragedy, he saw the natural order. Where others saw enemies, he saw the workings of cause and effect. This ability to see beyond the immediate freed him from the storm of human passions. He lived as though he stood outside of time, unhurried, unresentful, unafraid. And in that stillness, he found freedom. Inner strength, to Marcus Aurelius, was not about endless endurance. It was the harmony between reason and action. He wrote, "If something is within human power, then it is within mine." At first glance, it sounds proud, but in truth, it was the statement of a man who understood both his limits and his duty. He did not expect the world to bend to his will. He expected himself to be strong enough to live in accordance with it. When war dragged on, he did not despair. When victory came, he did not boast. To him, good and bad, success and failure were but waves, and the task of man was simply to learn how to ride them without sinking. That was the Stoic art of living, and Marcus Aurelius was its most luminous embodiment in history. But there were nights when Marcus could not sleep. Alone in his tent beneath the northern stars, he would ask himself, what is the meaning of all this? Power, fame, war. And then he would answer in silence. For he knew that meaning is not found in circumstances, but in how one meets them. To live rightly for one day is enough, he wrote, for each day is a complete life. These were not the words of a weary emperor, but the realization of a soul that had touched the essence of existence. In that moment, he was neither king nor philosopher, only a man, sitting beneath the infinite sky, accepting his smallness while holding infinite compassion. When Marcus Aurelius died in 180 AD, his empire was remembered not merely for its vastness, but for the moral light he brought to a dark age. It was said that he died as he lived, serene, lucid, unafraid. Meditations, the private journal he never meant to publish, became one of the most enduring works of philosophy ever written. It was not the voice of a ruler, but of a human being who had found absolute freedom within his own mind. And across the centuries, whenever the world falls again into chaos, people return to Marcus Aurelius, not to learn how to rule others, but to learn how to rule themselves. For in every page of his writing echoes a truth that defies time. Empires may fall, but the soul illuminated by reason never will. Perhaps what makes Marcus Aurelius immortal in the heart of humanity is not his throne, nor his military triumphs, but the quiet strength within him. The strength that allows a person to stand firm when everything around them falls apart. In Meditations, he wrote, "A mind disciplined by reason is an unbreakable fortress. No storm can overthrow it." And indeed, his life was proof of that truth. When betrayed by those he loved, he did not grow angry. When war claimed the lives of his dearest, he did not despair. When plague ravaged his empire, he did not curse fate. He simply observed, accepted, and acted within the limits of his power. That serenity made Marcus the embodiment of a leader who balanced strength with compassion, a balance every age needs, but few ever achieve. In an era when most emperors saw power as a tool for indulgence, Marcus Aurelius saw it as a burden to be carried with humility. He understood that the greater one's power, the easier it is to forget one's humanity. Thus, he reminded himself daily, "Do not let the throne make you forget that you too are mortal." Those words were not only a reflection of clarity, but of courage. The courage to look directly at impermanence, at the fleeting nature of fame. He did not build monuments to himself. He built peace within his soul, knowing that only that would endure beyond the decay of flesh. While others fought for power, he disciplined his mind. While others built palaces, he built virtue. And because of that, though his body turned to dust, his spirit continues to illuminate humanity across millennia. The philosophy of Marcus Aurelius was never dry or detached. It was deeply human. He did not deny exhaustion, nor did he conceal pain. He chose instead to face both with the steady clarity of reason. "If you are in pain," he wrote, "remember that it is only a sensation in the body. Do not let the soul suffer with it." These were not the words of an academic, but of a man lying in a war tent, body frail, yet spirit unshaken. Marcus did not teach people to flee from pain. He taught them to embrace it as part of life itself. For only by standing firm in the face of suffering can a person truly become strong. He believed the human soul possesses limitless endurance, as long as it knows the boundary between what it can control and what it cannot. Once that truth is understood, fear loses its power forever. Once, after a general's failed campaign, the man knelt before Marcus, begging forgiveness. The emperor replied, "You did what you believed was right. The outcome belongs to fate." In that single sentence, he expressed the essence of Stoicism. A person is responsible only for their intentions and actions, not for outcomes. Results are the work of countless forces beyond control: weather, illness, chance, the will of others. The only thing within our grasp is to act rightly, guided by reason and virtue. If we do so, even failure becomes a form of victory. This understanding is why Marcus could forgive so easily, because he knew that imperfection is inseparable from humanity. Within that compassion, we see not only a philosopher, but a man who reached true greatness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not seek peace outside yourself, for it is not there. Peace resides only within your own soul." That line distills the very essence of Stoicism and remains his greatest gift to humankind. In today's world, where people are consumed by noise, ambition, and digital distractions, his words still echo like a voice of awakening. For across the centuries, humanity continues to make the same mistake, searching for serenity in the external rather than the internal. Marcus Aurelius showed the opposite path, the inward journey, where one finds strength, freedom, and compassion. And it is precisely because he walked that path that he became one of the greatest souls history has ever known, the emperor who conquered not with the sword, but with reason and grace. When reading Meditations, one easily forgets that those profound philosophical reflections were not written in a quiet library, but amid the smoke and chaos of war, among the cries of dying soldiers and the cold winds sweeping across the Danube frontier. Marcus Aurelius wrote while living in what most would call hell, yet every line carries a tone of calm and clarity, as though spoken from another world. He understood that truth does not lie in external events, but in how we confront them. "My suffering," he wrote, "does not come from the world, but from the way I see the world." That understanding saved him, not only from despair, but from cruelty, from the madness that power often plants in the minds of those who rule. He preserved his humanity in an age when humanity itself was most severely tested. Marcus was not only a philosopher of reason, but also a philosopher of compassion. During the campaigns against the Germanic tribes, when Rome triumphed and his generals urged him to execute all prisoners, He refused. "If I kill them," he said, "I teach my children how to destroy. If I spare them, I teach them how to live." The decision angered many commanders, but Marcus remained steadfast. To him, a true victory was not the destruction of an enemy, but the conquest of one's own brutality. He did not see mercy as weakness, but as the highest form of strength, for only the truly powerful can remain compassionate while holding the power of life and death. That is why he is one of the few emperors in history celebrated not just for wisdom, but for virtue, a virtue untouched by time. Marcus Aurelius's serenity was not a comfortable stillness. It was the product of relentless discipline. He was not born calm. He learned calmness. Each time adversity struck, he observed his reactions as a scientist would observe phenomena. When angry, he asked, "What good does this anger do me?" When sad, he questioned, "Does this sadness make me live better?" When afraid, he looked directly at fear and saw it as nothing more than a shadow of the mind. To him, emotions were not enemies, but data, and reason was the instrument to process them. Through that approach, Marcus was never ruled by emotion. He used emotion as fuel for growth. He did not flee pain. He turned it into instruction. He did not try to extinguish fear. He learned to walk alongside it in peace. One famous image remains: Marcus sitting in his war tent at night, a map of the battlefield before him, his journal of meditations open beside him. He did not write of strategy or enemies, but simply, "Keep your soul pure, even if the world is filthy." That sentence cuts through darkness like a spiritual blade, a reminder that even in the blackest age, one can still guard the light within. Marcus understood that we cannot make the world perfect, but we can cleanse our own hearts day by day. And when a person does that, they become a mirror of integrity for their time, as Marcus was, and still is, across millennia. More than 2,000 years have passed, yet in an age shaken by wars, crises, and spiritual unrest, Marcus Aurelius's words shine anew, a light from the past illuminating the present. He teaches the people of the 21st century that no matter how much wealth, power, or technology we possess, true freedom begins with mastery of the self. A chaotic mind can bring down entire worlds, while a tranquil one can rebuild them. Marcus was not speaking about Rome. He was speaking about humanity. He did not speak to emperors. He spoke to every person struggling through the storms of life. And perhaps, as we read Meditations today, we are retracing his path, the eternal journey of rediscovering peace within a world that never ceases to change. There is something fascinating about Meditations that few notice. It was never meant to be published. It was simply Marcus Aurelius's private notes, personal reminders, written not for the world, but for himself. And yet, it is precisely because of this honesty that his words possess a power deeper than most philosophical works. He did not write to teach. He wrote to live by what he believed. Within each page, readers can feel the tension between a man who held absolute power and a soul yearning for absolute peace. Marcus did not hide his vulnerabilities. He admitted when he was weary, torn between duty and freedom, between the weight of an emperor and the longing to live as an ordinary man. But that honesty is what makes Meditations a mirror of the human spirit, where we see reflections of ourselves in the eternal struggle between reason and emotion. Marcus Aurelius understood that philosophy cannot save one from suffering, but it can help one understand and transcend it. He compared philosophy to medicine for the soul. It cannot prevent illness, but it can teach how to heal. In Meditations, he wrote, "Whenever you face something unpleasant, ask yourself, Is this beyond my control? If it is, do not resist it. That is the essence of acceptance, not surrender, but facing reality with clarity. Marcus believed that every form of pain has a cause, and understanding that cause is the first step toward freedom. Just as a physician must diagnose before treating, a person must look inward before trying to change the world. And perhaps, because he first healed himself, he left behind humanity's most precious remedy, reason and compassion. Some have called Marcus Aurelius the loneliest man in history. It is hard to disagree. He lived among thousands, yet few truly understood him. As an emperor, he could not show weakness. As a philosopher, he could not ignore truth. He was trapped between two worlds, the world of power and the world of spirit. Yet instead of letting loneliness consume him, he turned it into creative strength. Every page of Meditations is a conversation between his soul and the universe, a dialogue through which he found companionship in his own reason. And strangely, from that solitude, Marcus forged a timeless bond with millions who would follow, those lost, searching for meaning in life. He showed them that solitude is not a sign of weakness, but proof that the soul is growing. What made Marcus Aurelius truly great was not only that he lived according to Stoic philosophy, but that he humanized it with his heart. Many misunderstand Stoicism as coldness, but Marcus proved that tranquility does not mean apathy. He still loved, still grieved, still suffered loss, but he never allowed those emotions to corrupt his essence. He wept when his children died. He mourned for fallen soldiers. Yet beyond his tears lay acceptance and gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to live, to love, to witness life itself. His strength did not lie in suppressing emotion, but in transforming it into wisdom. And that is what set Marcus apart from every philosopher before him. He did not merely preach virtue, he lived it to his final breath. If the essence of Marcus Aurelius's thought could be distilled into one sentence, it might be this: all we truly have is this moment, and we can choose to live it through reason or through fear. Simple as it sounds, it contains the entire depth of Stoic philosophy. In a world stretched thin between past and future, Marcus calls us back to the present, the only place where life truly exists. When the mind is anchored in the now, fear dissolves, resentment fades, and wisdom awakens. That is why, even after 2,000 years, Meditations never grows old. Because humanity, both then and now, continues to seek the same thing: a peace not granted by circumstance, but born from the strength of the soul. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius often returns to one central idea: that everything in existence follows a grand order, and that humanity is merely a small part within it. Look up at the stars, he wrote, and realize that your soul is also moving in harmony with them. Amid the chaos of the world, he held an unshakable belief in a universal reason, the Logos, governing all things. This belief did not make him passive. It gave him serenity. If everything happens for a reason, then one need only fulfill one's duty with integrity. Marcus did not try to control fate. He learned to flow with it. He lived like an actor in a play directed by the divine. He did not choose his role or complain about the script. He simply performed his part to the best of his ability. Perhaps this is why he became a symbol of proud acceptance, a man who bowed before destiny, but never surrendered to it. This philosophy was not just a comfort in hard times, but a guide for daily action. Marcus believed that if everyone did their part, emperor, general, or farmer, the world would naturally remain in balance. The bee does not need to understand the workings of the whole hive. he wrote. It only needs to do its own work well. Likewise, a person's duty is not to change the world, but to live rightly within it, so that the world improves as a result. To him, morality was not in words, but in daily actions, in how we treat others, in our patience during hardship, and in our honesty with ourselves. Inner strength, Marcus taught, lies not in conquering others, but in refusing to become what we despise. One of the most memorable passages in Meditations reads, "When someone offends you, remember that they act according to what they believe is right. Once you understand this, your anger will fade." This was not merely advice on tolerance. It was a profound insight into human nature. Marcus recognized that most hatred arises from ignorance, from our failure to understand one another. Thus, he chose to respond with reason, not emotion. When criticized, he did not retaliate with harsh words, but with calm action. When betrayed, he did not seek revenge, but withdrew in silence. To him, forgiveness was not weakness, but the highest victory of the spirit. Only one who can remain kind after being wounded is truly strong. And Marcus lived this truth throughout his life. Yet there were moments when Marcus grew weary of humanity. In one deeply personal reflection, he confessed, "At times, it is hard to love mankind, and that is precisely when one must love them most." That line reveals a very human Marcus, vulnerable, relatable, and sincere. He was not a saint, but a man struggling to remain pure amid corruption and deceit. He did not seek escape from the world. He sought to live well within it. And for that reason, he became a model for all who strive to live decently in an indecent world. His philosophy does not demand perfection, only perseverance. True strength, he taught, is not in never falling, but in rising calmly after each fall. Marcus Aurelius taught that everything in life is transient, and that this is not a tragedy, but a liberation. "Everything you love will change," he wrote, "for that is the law of nature. Do not fear disappearance, for in it you will find renewal." Properly understood, this is an invitation to live more consciously. When we realize nothing lasts forever, we stop clinging. When we stop clinging, we begin to love genuinely. For only by accepting that those we love, the things we possess, and even ourselves will one day vanish, can we truly appreciate each fleeting moment. Marcus did not fear endings, because he understood that death does not erase the meaning of life. It completes it. And in that impermanence, he found what is eternal, the peace of a soul that has learned to let go of fear. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not wait for philosophy from others. Become philosophy in your own actions." This was not merely advice. It was the very essence of how he lived. He did not use philosophy to display wisdom, but to discipline himself in every moment. While others sought victory through power, he conquered through inner order. While others searched for glory in the eyes of the world, he found it in the stillness of the soul. To Marcus, philosophy was not a collection of words, but an art of living. And that is why, more than 2,000 years later, he remains not only a king of history, but a guide for those searching for meaning in an age of chaos. Marcus viewed life through the eyes of one who understood the fragility of all things. In Meditations, he wrote, "You are dust, yet also a spark of the divine. Forget neither." To him, humanity was a paradox between the finite and the infinite, a body destined to decay, and a spirit capable of eternity. He never saw himself above others because of his crown. In fact, the more power he held, the more he recognized his own smallness in the vastness of the cosmos. Each night, he gazed at the stars and asked himself, "These stars will still shine when I am gone. So what truly matters in my life?" That question did not make him despair. It made him humble. He knew that meaning does not come from the length of one's life, but from how one lives within it. And in that humility, Marcus became a giant of the spirit. What made Marcus Aurelius great was not his words on virtue, but the way he embodied them. When rebels seized Rome, he took no revenge. When slandered, he did not retaliate. He simply wrote, "I cannot make others just. I can only live justly." He believed that words alone could not change the world. Only action could. And so, he became the embodiment of leadership by example, not by authority. In an age of deception and ambition, Marcus chose honesty, knowing that truth is the only foundation strong enough to endure time. He did not build his empire on fear, but on trust. Trust that humanity could live nobly, in any circumstance, if it had the courage to do what is right. Marcus Aurelius faced what every ruler fears most: betrayal by those he loved. When Avidius Cassius, his trusted friend and general, rebelled, the empire trembled. His advisors urged him to execute Cassius to restore order, but Marcus said only, "If he betrayed me, it is my fault for failing to earn his trust." When Cassius was killed by his own men, Marcus refused to punish his family or his troops. He ordered that Cassius be buried with honor, saying, "No one should die for a mistake that has ended." At a moment when most kings would have spilled blood to secure power, Marcus chose mercy, not from weakness, but from wisdom, for he knew that vengeance only multiplies suffering. Forgiveness, to him, was not sentiment. It was supreme intelligence. In his final days, as illness weakened his body, Marcus continued to write, his hand trembling, but his mind unshaken. "When death comes," he wrote, "receive it as part of nature, as flowers fall, as leaves descend." His words carry no fear, only freedom. He understood that life's purpose is not to escape death, but to learn how to leave with peace. In his last moments, he called upon no gods, made no pleas, voiced no regrets. He simply closed his eyes, breathed gently, and left behind a small book, the gift of a soul that had understood the full meaning of existence. Meditations was not his will, but his whisper to the future, that in every age, one force alone can help humankind rise above chaos: the power of a mind that is disciplined, compassionate, and serene amid the endless current of life. Looking back at the life of Marcus Aurelius, one finds a profound paradox. The closer he stood to power, the further he drifted from the desire for it. In his youth, he was surrounded by the lavish splendor of Rome, banquets, gold, and endless flattery. Yet as he matured, he came to see that such excess only made a person weak. "The more you possess," he wrote, "the more you become possessed." And so, Marcus chose simplicity that shocked those around him. He ate with his soldiers, wore coarse garments, slept on wooden beds, and denied himself luxury, not out of ascetic pride, but because he understood a simple truth. When comfort rules a man, freedom leaves him. And for Marcus, freedom was the most sacred gift that reason could grant. In Meditations, he wrote, "Nothing brings a man more happiness than to live in harmony with his own nature." To him, that nature meant living through reason, virtue, and compassion. Whenever anger or despair threatened to overwhelm him, he asked himself, "Am I still living in accordance with my nature?" It was a simple question, yet powerful enough to pull him out of the shadows of emotion. It became his moral compass, keeping him steady amid the temptations of power. Every decision began with that question, not to attain perfection, but to ensure his soul remained untainted by ambition. Through this constant self-examination, Marcus transcended the role of a ruler and became a silent teacher for all humankind. Marcus Aurelius never called himself a philosopher, yet he lived philosophy more deeply than most who bore the title. To him, philosophy was not a discipline, but a way of living. "Do not speak of goodness. Be good," he wrote. Short, simple, but charged with the force of action. He believed that knowledge without practice is dead. Thus, he turned every day of his life into a practical lesson. When insulted, he practiced patience. When defeated, humility. When victorious, gratitude. For him, philosophy did not dwell in words, but in conduct, in how one treats others, in the calm maintained through hardship, and in the refusal to let the heart grow cold amid a harsh world. The Stoics taught that we cannot control the wind, but we can adjust the sails. Marcus Aurelius embodied this truth more than anyone. He did not seek to make life easier. He sought to make himself stronger. When illness struck, he did not lament. When war dragged on, he did not despair. He simply reminded himself, what comes is what must come. To him, acceptance was not surrender. It was the highest form of courage. The courage to face reality without fear. That is why suffering did not shatter him. It refined him. He did not live to avoid adversity. He lived to prove that a man could remain virtuous even when the world around him collapsed. And that is what set him apart from all other rulers. He was a man who used reason to rise above fate itself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "When you wake up in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to love." The words sound simple, yet they unlock the essence of true happiness. In a world consumed by ambition and anxiety, people often forget the most fundamental joy, the joy of being. Marcus reminded us that happiness does not come from having more, but from appreciating what already is. When one learns to be grateful for every breath, every dawn, every chance to do good, then they have found the peace they have sought all their lives. And that is the eternal message of the philosopher-king. Happiness is not a destination, but an attitude. Whoever learns to give thanks for each passing moment has already touched the summit of inner strength. When reading Meditations, one easily forgets that Marcus Aurelius did not write to teach anyone. He wrote to teach himself. Every sentence, every line was a quiet reminder he whispered in the stillness of the night, as the wind moved through his tent and the echoes of battle lingered beyond. "Do not forget that you will die," he wrote, not to inspire fear, but to awaken life. He wanted to remind himself that fame, quarrels, and wounds all dissolve like dust, leaving only one thing of true importance: how we live today. That was memento mori, the Stoic art of remembering death, not as darkness, but as the teacher of life. Once a person accepts their mortality, they no longer tremble before uncertainty. They become more awake, live more deeply, and love more honestly. Marcus turned that philosophy into the rhythm of his very breath. To Marcus, death was not something to fear, but a natural part of the universe's cycle. "From the moment we are born, we begin to die," he wrote, "and that is the fairness of nature." He did not seek to escape what could not be escaped. He learned to greet it with gratitude. Every new day of life was a gift, a chance to strengthen the mind, to love a little more, to understand a little deeper the essence of being human. He taught that only when one ceases to fear death can one truly live. Thus, in his final years, when his body grew frail, Marcus still wrote, still observed, still lived with the serenity of a man who knew that death was not an ending, but a return to the greater harmony of the cosmos. In the final passages of Meditations, there is a line that feels like his last sigh. When a man no longer expects anything, he is free. That single thought contains an entire lifetime of reflection. Marcus realized that all human suffering springs from attachment to power, to reputation, to others, to outcomes. But when we release all craving, we are no longer bound. Not because we abandon the world, but because we stop depending on it. True freedom is not having everything, but being mastered by nothing. Marcus achieved this not through miracles, but through daily discipline, forging his soul like iron until reason became bright enough to illuminate every shadow within. One of the most admirable things about Marcus Aurelius was his humility before the universe. Though emperor of a mighty empire, he saw himself as a mere speck in the current of time. All empires, kings, and great men will be forgotten, he wrote, but reason and virtue will not. This was not resignation. It was clarity. He knew that human glory is but a flash of lightning in the vast night sky of existence. Yet if that flash shines with compassion, it leaves an eternal echo. And so he lived not to be remembered, but to live rightly. To live rightly, for him, meant to live by reason, with kindness, and never to betray the goodness within. In that way, he touched immortality, not of the body, but of the spirit. Perhaps, if Marcus Aurelius could speak to the modern world, he would not talk of war, power, or politics, but ask one simple question: are you in control of your mind? For in this world of noise and conflict, humanity's greatest struggle remains the same: the chaos within. We can conquer space, create artificial intelligence, and build cities of light, yet still fail to find peace in our own hearts. Marcus found it 2,000 years ago, not through technology, but through self-understanding. He proved that peace does not come from silencing the world, but from strengthening the mind so that the world can no longer disturb it. And that is the lesson humanity, after all these centuries, is still learning, day by day. Marcus Aurelius understood better than anyone that the greatest battlefield lies within the human mind. Nowhere else do good and evil, reason and desire, peace and chaos wage such relentless war. The enemy cannot touch your soul unless you open the gate, he wrote. A truth learned through blood, solitude, and sorrow. Throughout his life, Marcus faced countless external foes, rebellions, plagues, and moral decay within the empire. Yet he knew the true enemy was internal: anger, pride, despair. He chose not to fight with swords, but with thought, observing every reaction within himself as a philosopher gazes into a mirror. And each time he triumphed in that silent war, his empire grew stronger, for he knew that no man can rule the world if he cannot rule himself. He once wrote, "If you cannot change your circumstances, you can change your perception of them." That single line became a compass for millions, from leaders and warriors to ordinary people struggling with pain and loss. It captures a simple but profound truth. We cannot choose our circumstances, but we can always choose our attitude. And it is attitude, not circumstance, that defines the quality of a human being. Marcus did not live in peace. He lived amidst crisis. And that is precisely why his philosophy shines so clearly. He taught that instead of wishing for an easier world, one must build stronger shoulders. Instead of asking for less suffering, one should learn to turn pain into the fire that tempers the will. In every word he wrote, there is the quiet echo of resilience, a gentle strength that nothing could conquer. What made Marcus Aurelius unique was that he did not use philosophy to escape fear, but to understand it. He did not deny fear. He conversed with it. He did not reject pain. He listened to it. For he believed that every emotion, even the darkest, exists for a reason. And when examined through the light of reason, it becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. Suffering, he wrote, is a necessary part of the path, but it does not define you. Only your response to it does. To Marcus, suffering was not a curse but a gift, the universe's way of revealing the hidden strength within. Through that understanding, he transformed Stoicism from dry doctrine into a living map, a way for human beings to walk through fear without losing their humanity. Yet even as emperor, Marcus remained humble, always a student, never a master. "I am no better than anyone," he wrote. "I am only trying to be less wrong each day." The simplicity of that sentence reveals the depth of his wisdom. He knew that the moment a person believes they are already good, they stop growing. Marcus chose humility, learning from everyone around him, slaves, soldiers, even the children in his palace. He found philosophy not in schools, but in life itself. Every person was a teacher, every mistake a lesson, every failure a mirror. And because he never stopped improving himself, he became not just a ruler of Rome, but a ruler of hearts, a guide for all souls seeking awakening. Perhaps the greatest legacy Marcus Aurelius left humanity is not his victories, but the example of a man who lived what he wrote. He never asked others to do what he could not. When he taught compassion, he practiced it. When he preached calm in the face of loss, he lived it. That harmony between word and deed is what keeps his philosophy forever alive. In a world drowning in pretense, Marcus reminds us that truth remains the greatest power. He proved that one can hold supreme authority and still possess a gentle heart, that one can stand in chaos and still remain at peace. And that, above all, is the lesson the modern world still needs. That true strength lies not in conquering the world, but in conquering oneself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "When faced with adversity, a man has two choices: to become bitter or to become strong." That line was not mere philosophy. It was the mirror of his entire life. Every hardship that came to Marcus was a test of fate, and he met each one with astonishing resilience. When the Antonine Plague swept across the empire, killing millions, he did not flee Rome for safety. He stayed at the heart of the crisis, tending to his people, sharing their suffering. He did not rule through fear, but through compassion. In a time when panic and blame consumed society, he reminded them, "It is not the world that is unjust. It is we who fail to understand its order." To Marcus, adversity was not an enemy, but a mirror, a way to see one's true nature. And because of that, he turned tragedy into wisdom and pain into light. What made Marcus Aurelius extraordinary was that he never separated philosophy from life. He did not speak of reason while sitting on a golden throne, but while shivering through sleepless nights, surrounded by the dying breaths of his soldiers. He did not preach compassion in a marble hall, but on the battlefield, where death waited in every shadow. For Marcus, Philosophy was not decoration. It was survival, the anchor that kept his soul upright when everything else collapsed. "You cannot avoid the storm," he wrote, "but you can become the rock that stands against it." That image captures everything. Serenity is not escape. It is endurance. Once a person learns to stand firm amid chaos, they no longer fear it. Marcus's philosophy, therefore, was not abstract. It was armor for the soul, forged for those lost between fear and ambition. Marcus Aurelius was not only a Stoic, he was a man of compassion. Many leaders can remain rational, but few can remain humane. Marcus was that rare exception. He understood that reason without compassion leads to coldness, while compassion without reason leads to weakness. So he balanced both. He was stern with himself, yet gentle with others. Before passing judgment, he always asked, "If I were in their place, how would I wish to be treated?" That single question allowed him to be fair without cruelty, decisive without callousness. True justice, he believed, was not in punishment, but in helping others see their error and offering them the chance to change. Because of that, under his rule, even amid war, Rome experienced one of its most humane and stable eras in history. In the modern world, where people are consumed by haste and endless pressure, Marcus Aurelius's words still echo like a bell. "Do not lose your peace over things beyond your control. We worry about what has not yet come, rage over what has already passed, and in doing so, forget the only moment that truly exists, the present." Marcus called this the art of living in the moment. He did not urge people to flee responsibility, but to focus on what stands before them. For when we do our part well, the universe takes care of the rest. That ancient wisdom feels like medicine for the modern soul, a reminder for a restless world drowning in anxiety over the uncontrollable. If Marcus were alive today, he might say, "Turn off the noise. Return to your breath. Peace is not out there. It waits within you." Near the end of Meditations, Marcus wrote, "Depart as one who is grateful, not as one who is afraid. It is a farewell both gentle and profound, the voice of a soul that has understood the full meaning of existence." Throughout his life, he gathered not gold, but clarity. He built not monuments, but character. And when he left this world, he did not leave behind an empire of conquest, but a legacy of the spirit. His words, written 2 millennia ago, remain timeless because they speak of what never grows old: how to live rightly, love deeply, and depart in peace. Marcus Aurelius proved that a man may be emperor of the world, but the greater triumph is to become emperor of his own soul. And in the quiet of history, he still reigns, not by power, but by the eternal light of reason and compassion. Marcus Aurelius stands as one of history's greatest proofs that wisdom and compassion can coexist, that intellect and kindness are not opposites, but 2 wings of the same soul. In him, one could see the strength of a ruler and the gentleness of a philosopher, the sharpness of reason and the warmth of the heart. It was this harmony that made him the embodiment of moral power. In today's world, where strength often walks hand in hand with abuse, Marcus reminds us that true power is not to dominate, but to serve. He understood that greatness lies in using one's power for good. That is why, whenever he faced a decision, he did not ask, "Is this useful to me?" but rather, "Is this right?" Within that question lies the heart of Stoicism itself: to act not from fear or ambition, but from righteousness, the only thing that endures through time. Throughout his writings, Marcus Aurelius returned again and again to the theme of gratitude. Be grateful for every day you are alive, for every challenge that helps you grow, for every person who reflects yourself back to you. To him, gratitude was not mere courtesy. It was a way of living for the wise. A grateful person is never poor, for they see abundance in simplicity. Marcus taught that happiness does not come from having more, but from needing less. When people stop demanding that the world give them more, they begin to see the beauty of what they already have. This is the Stoic ideal of eudaimonia, the state of living in harmony with reason, in tune with nature, at peace not through possessions, but through inner balance. That was the secret that kept Marcus serene amid luxury and suffering alike, amid power and solitude. Marcus Aurelius also understood that gratitude cannot exist without forgiveness. When others err, he wrote, remember they are human, and so are you. Few rulers in history have left such a profoundly human message. In a world torn by anger and revenge, forgiveness is an act of strength, not the strength of authority, but the strength of a free spirit. Marcus did not see forgiveness as weakness. He saw it as mastery over emotion. The angry man is ruled by others. The forgiving man rules himself. He refused to let resentment live in his heart, knowing that hatred is the chain that binds us to the past. And when one learns to let go, one frees not only the other, but oneself. At the deepest level of Marcus Aurelius's philosophy lies his belief that every human soul carries a spark of the cosmos, a divine fragment of universal reason. He believed that if humans live in accordance with that inner light, the world naturally becomes better. Thus, he never sought to change others by force, but by moral example. Be a mirror, not a judge, he wrote, and he lived by it. He wielded philosophy not as a staff to strike with, but as a lantern to illuminate. He led not through sermons, but through the integrity of his own life. That is why Meditations does not read like a lecture to others, but as a reflection, a mirror in which every reader sees their own fears, angers, desires, and brief moments of awakening. When Marcus Aurelius died, it was said he felt no fear, no regret, only calm. Smiling faintly, he whispered, I have lived as I wished to live, and now I leave as nature wills. In that final sentence lies the peace of one who understood the law of life and death, the serenity of a soul free from all desire. He did not see death as an end, but as a return to the universal reason, where all souls merge as one. And perhaps that is why, though his body has long since turned to dust, his spirit still lives within all who strive to live wisely amid chaos. For each time we choose reason over fear, compassion over resentment, stillness over turmoil, we live as Marcus Aurelius once did. He was not merely the last emperor of Rome's golden age. He remains an eternal symbol of inner strength, a quiet, undying flame that has burned within the human heart for more than 2,000 years. Marcus Aurelius understood that life would never be perfect, and perhaps it was precisely this understanding that brought him peace. He accepted that people would always make mistakes, that the world would always be chaotic, and that everything we love would one day fade. Yet instead of despairing, he saw all of it as part of a vast mosaic that only the universe could fully perceive. Every event, he wrote, is a fragment of the whole. When you look far enough, you will see that even misfortune has its reason to exist. This belief allowed him to live without bitterness, resentment, or fear. He trusted that everything happens as it must, and that the human task is not to resist fate, but to accept it, and then act with reason. In our modern world of uncertainty and obsession with control, Marcus reminds us that true freedom does not come from holding on, but from knowing when to let go. His philosophy also teaches that to preserve inner peace, one must learn to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. He called this the separation of the mind. When faced with hardship, Marcus did not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but rather, "What can I do with what is happening?" The second question transforms a victim into a master. It frees one from the spiral of complaint and directs energy toward wise action. In an age where emotions rule, Marcus's wisdom still whispers, reaction is a choice. The world may be in chaos, yet the mind can remain calm. Others may offend you, yet you hold the power not to be harmed. Everything may collapse, yet your dignity, if you choose to guard it, can still stand firm. And that is the strength Marcus spent his lifetime cultivating. Another profound aspect of Marcus Aurelius's thought was his view of time. Everything you see passes as swiftly as smoke, and everyone you love is but a fleeting moment, he wrote. Yet he did not say this to invoke sadness, but gratitude. When one understands that nothing lasts forever, one stops postponing happiness. We thank sooner, forgive faster, and love more fully. Marcus believed that only those who grasp the brevity of life truly know how to live. He neither mourned the past nor feared the future, for he understood that both are illusions. The only thing that exists is the present, this very moment, where we can choose how to live. And it was his complete presence in each moment that made Marcus immortal in the human spirit. He did not live longer than others, but he lived deeper. Marcus Aurelius also believed in the sacred interconnectedness of all living beings. He wrote, "We are made to work together like hands and eyes, like the rows of teeth above and below. When you harm another, you harm yourself." It was a vision centuries ahead of its time, a philosophy of unity that humanity still struggles to relearn through every global crisis. Marcus knew that no one could be truly at peace while others suffered. Thus, he ruled not through dominance, but through service. He treated his people as extensions of himself and reminded them that the highest duty of a human being is not to command, but to contribute. "If you can help someone, help them now," he wrote. "The chance to serve is itself a gift from fate." In a world where selfishness often reigns, those words still shine as a beacon of humanity. It can be said that Marcus Aurelius's greatest legacy is not an empire, but an example, a way of being human. He showed that greatness does not lie in applause, but in quiet acts of integrity. He taught that power is not in ruling others, but in ruling oneself. He revealed that happiness is not found in changing the world, but in changing how we see it. And when all else fades, achievements, fame, even one's name, only one question remains. Did we live with kindness? Did we keep our humanity? Did we face fate with calm courage? For Marcus, that was the only answer that ever mattered. And when we live by that spirit, even if we are not emperors, we are still free, sovereigns of our own souls amid the infinite cosmos. Marcus Aurelius was one of humanity's rare examples of a man who truly lived by the ideals he professed. Throughout his reign as emperor, he never allowed philosophy to become a distant abstraction. Whenever he faced hardship, he did not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but rather, How can I remain virtuous in the midst of this trial? That single question carried him through hundreds of battles, thousands of lonely nights, and countless losses. For he understood that virtue, not success, is the true measure of a life. When one places morality above outcome, freedom is found. But when one values outcome above morality, one becomes a slave to circumstance. Marcus chose the harder path, and because of that, he became not just a ruler of Rome, but a ruler of time itself, a sovereign whose wisdom continues to guide humanity across millennia. He once wrote, "Do not talk about being good, be good." A simple phrase, yet one that carries the full power of action. Marcus did not teach virtue through theory, but through example. When rebels were captured, he did not execute them to inspire fear. He forgave them to inspire healing. When the court urged him to tighten control to preserve his rule, he chose the opposite, to trust, to empower the people. He knew that fear might command obedience for a moment, but only love and justice could earn loyalty forever. Thus, his reign is remembered not for conquest, but for compassion, a form of leadership so rare that even his enemies respected him. Among the most profound lessons Marcus Aurelius left was his view of fame. He called it the shadow of smoke, the reflection of clouds, something that exists only to disappear. Those once praised, he wrote, are now dust, and those who praised them, the same. This was not cynicism, but liberation. He understood that glory fades, and therefore refused to be ruled by it. When praised, he reminded himself that applause was only an echo of emptiness. When criticized, he saw it as the murmur of ignorance. That attitude gave him serenity in a world obsessed with reputation. He taught that once we stop needing approval, we begin to live authentically. And only those who live authentically can live deeply, not as shadows of public opinion, but as free souls. Marcus also emphasized the dignity of labor and discipline. The bee does not stop for praise, he wrote. It simply works because that is its nature. That line reveals his reverence for humility and dedication. He believed every task, no matter how small, has meaning when done with integrity. Philosophy, to him, was never an escape from life. It was a means of engaging with it more deeply. Philosophy was not a refuge from the world, but a shield that allowed one to live within it without being consumed by it. Thus, he worked not for reward, but out of duty, not out of fear of failure, but from faith that every right action is a quiet victory of the soul. He lived as though repaying a debt, the debt of gratitude, of responsibility, of love for humankind. Looking back on his life, one understands why Marcus Aurelius is remembered as the philosopher-king, not because he wrote about philosophy, but because he embodied it. He proved that wisdom is not only for those in libraries, but also for those standing amid battle. That serenity is not reserved for hermits, but for anyone who can keep their heart pure in the storm. That strength lies not in domination, but in compassion. And that humanity's greatest triumph is not in expanding empires, but in refusing to let power corrupt the heart. Marcus Aurelius left no golden palaces, yet he left a mirror that still reflects light through time. And each time humanity loses its way, that light returns, reminding us that true peace is not found in power, but in mastering one's own mind. In his final years, Marcus Aurelius came to realize with profound clarity that the stillness of the mind is the greatest treasure a human being can possess. He had witnessed countless wars, rebellions, and the collapse of worldly glory, and he understood that everything could vanish in an instant, except for the peace within. "If your mind remains calm," he wrote, Nothing can disturb you. Those words were not distant advice, but the distilled wisdom of a man who had walked through storms. To Marcus, tranquility was not a reward, but a skill. Something forged through each day, each thought, each breath. When the world outside grew turbulent, he turned inward, seeking refuge in his own soul. And there, in the silence of his mind, he found what no empire could ever grant him: freedom. Marcus Aurelius did not fear death. He saw it as a natural continuation, as evening follows day. All that is born must dissolve, he wrote, and there is nothing fearful in what is natural. Stoic philosophy taught him not to see death through the lens of dread, but through understanding. Life does not end, it transforms, like a flame that extinguishes only to light another place. When a person ceases to see death as an enemy, they finally learn how to live. Marcus urged us not to waste our days fearing the inevitable, but to live each moment as if it were a final gift. For life is not measured by its length, but by its depth, not by what we possess, but by who we become. When one lives with the awareness that every day could be the last, they live more beautifully, more kindly, and more freely. One of Marcus Aurelius's most admirable qualities was his balance amid triumph and tragedy. He was never arrogant when praised, nor broken when betrayed. He wrote, "If fame arrives, welcome it as a passing guest. If it departs, bid it farewell as an old friend." Such detachment is the summit of self-mastery, something most of humanity still strives for. Marcus understood that emotions are waves and reason is the ocean. If we stand firm, the waves cannot sweep us away. He did not try to suppress emotions, but to observe them, as one watches clouds drift across the sky. Anger, fear, sorrow, they are all visitors. And only when we stop identifying ourselves with them can we find lasting peace. That was his greatest lesson. We cannot control the wind, but we can learn to steer the sails of the mind. Marcus Aurelius also embodied a rare form of courage, the courage to confront oneself. He wrote meditations not to instruct others, but to discipline his own soul. Each page was a dialogue between his humanity and his reason, between his weaknesses and his higher self. He reminded himself of his faults, temptations, and moments of doubt, without excuses, without embellishment. That honesty is what makes Meditations one of the most authentic works in human history. Every reader finds themselves within it, with their fears, their mistakes, their longing to become better. Marcus showed that greatness is not perfection. It is the willingness to face one's imperfections without turning away. And only those who dare to look into their inner darkness can ever find true light. Ultimately, Marcus Aurelius left humanity a timeless legacy, the unity of wisdom and compassion. He taught that philosophy is not just a tool for thinking, but a way to love more deeply. When we understand the fragility of life, we become gentler with others. When we realize that every soul is fighting its own hidden battle, we become more forgiving. And when we see that everything we own is temporary, we learn to give freely. Marcus lived this truth completely, and it made him one of the most humane figures in all of history. He proved that one can be strong without cruelty, wise without pride, powerful without losing kindness. And in that rare harmony, humanity found the truest definition of greatness. If the life of Marcus Aurelius were a book, its final chapter would not end in tragedy, but in enlightenment. When age and illness came for him, he neither complained nor prayed for salvation. Instead, he wrote, "Accept what nature brings, as you once welcomed spring and autumn." It was the attitude of one who had endured every pain and discovered that resistance only breeds exhaustion. Marcus met death as one greets an old friend, calm, gentle, and grateful. He knew the body would return to earth, the breath to the wind, and the soul to the cosmos. There was no loss, only transformation. And in that moment, when he closed his eyes, the world did not lose an emperor. It gained a legend, the legend of a man who lived and died in perfect harmony with reason and compassion. What made Marcus Aurelius remarkable was that he never treated philosophy as a religion to worship, but as an art to practice. He did not pray to be saved. He trained himself to be free. To him, every day was an exercise, to wake with gratitude, to work with integrity, to meet others with kindness, and to rest with peace. He understood that the moral path has no destination, only a journey. And if one moves forward even a single step each day, one is already walking in the spirit of the greatest philosophers. In a world where many seek enlightenment through dogma, Marcus reminded us that true wisdom does not come from blind belief, but from honest experience. It is not our words that make us wise. It is how we live quietly, day after day. He once wrote, "Act as if today were your last. Fear nothing. Hesitate at nothing. Deceive no one." These were not mere words, but the creed he lived by. His awareness of life's limits gave his every moment depth and meaning. Only when we understand that everything can be lost do we truly learn to love. Only when we see that time is finite do we begin to cherish it. Marcus did not waste his life in envy or resentment. He spent it learning, loving, understanding, and forgiving. That is why, 2,000 years later, his words still move readers to tears, because in them we do not find a God, but a man. Not perfection, but the soul of someone striving for peace amid storms, just like us. That is his immortality, the immortality of wisdom and compassion. Today, in a world drowning in the noise of ambition and fear, Marcus Aurelius remains a light along the path. He reminds us that true strength lies not in conquering others, but in mastering oneself. He teaches that freedom is not doing whatever we desire, but not being ruled by our emotions. He proves that happiness does not come from having everything, but from recognizing that we already have enough. His words, simple yet profound, are medicine for an anxious and lonely age. When the modern soul pauses, breathes deeply, and opens meditations, it can almost hear the voice of an old friend whispering, "Be calm. All will pass, and you will still be yourself." And perhaps the final lesson Marcus Aurelius wished to leave humanity is the harmony between reason and the heart. He never saw them as enemies. Reason helps us understand the world. The heart helps us love it. When we have reason without compassion, we become cold. When we have compassion without reason, we become fragile. But when the two unite, we achieve perfect serenity, the state Marcus called a mind in harmony with nature. And that, perhaps, is what every human being seeks across time. Peace, not from control, but from acceptance, from moving in rhythm with life itself. For as Marcus once wrote, "You cannot command the wind, but you can adjust your sails." And when we learn that, we too become emperors, not of nations, but of our own souls. When we look back on the life of Marcus Aurelius, we see not merely a Roman emperor, but the reflection of humanity itself, the image of a soul seeking peace amid chaos. He was not born to live easily. He was born to prove that wisdom and compassion can coexist even in the place where power most corrupts the human heart. He fought wars, faced rebellions, endured personal loss. Yet his spirit remained unbroken. His strength did not come from the throne, but from the quiet discipline of each morning when he looked in the mirror and reminded himself, "Today I shall meet the arrogant, the deceitful, the selfish, but they are human, just as I am." That simple awareness made him a free man in a world of bondage, a lucid mind amid the blindness of the crowd. Marcus needed no crown to shine. His light came from within. When Marcus Aurelius passed away, the Roman Empire endured, vast and magnificent. But what he left to humanity was far greater. A living example, a small book whose power transcended time. Meditations is not a monument of marble, but a quiet conversation between two souls, one of the writer in solitude and one of the reader in silence. Its pages are mirrors that show us there is no true difference between emperor and commoner when both must face fear, pain, and death. That is what makes Marcus so profoundly human. He never taught us how to be saints. He taught us how to be human, to think clearly, to love deeply, to forgive sincerely, and to let go gracefully. And in doing so, we touch what he called inner freedom, the final goal of every Stoic philosopher. The philosophy of Marcus Aurelius never grows old, for it belongs not to a specific age, but to the essence of being human. In every era of history, from blood-soaked battlefields to cities of neon light, people have wrestled with the same questions. How can I keep peace in my heart? How can I live with purpose? How can I face loss without breaking? Marcus answered those questions with his life. He never promised that life would be easy. He proved that even amid suffering, one can live beautifully if one keeps the soul pure and the faith in goodness alive. His words are not merely philosophy. They are medicine for the soul, a reminder that we may stumble, but we must never lose our dignity. And perhaps, in the stillness of time, Marcus Aurelius still watches over humanity, not as a saint, but as a friend. He whispers to us, "Do not let the world make you bitter, even when you see too much cruelty. Keep your heart soft, but steadfast. Keep loving life, even when it hurts." He taught that courage is not the absence of fear, but the act of walking forward despite it. That serenity is not escape, but acceptance. That happiness is not a result, but a way of being. These truths seem simple, yet in our modern age of noise and pressure, they are the keys to inner freedom, the kind of freedom no wealth or fame can buy. And when the world continues to change, when new empires rise and fall, when technology surpasses imagination, when humankind journeys to other planets, the words of Marcus Aurelius will still echo. For he did not speak of Rome, he spoke of the human soul. He did not preach power, he taught self-mastery. He did not build temples of stone. He built, in the heart of humanity, a temple of wisdom and compassion. There, the Stoic flame still burns, small yet steady, quiet yet eternal. And as long as human beings continue to seek light in the darkness, they will still hear his voice whisper, "Be calm, O human. Live with reason, live with kindness, and you will never be alone."